As I explained to Mark, I'm actually wearing this outfit because I have a friend who is, I was cheering her up because she's going in for cancer surgery, and I had told her that another friend of mine had a pie party in her efforts to deal with her cancer, and I am not a very good cook, so I decided I would come as lemon meringue, and this was the outfit. And I figured it was a good excuse to play dress up, and Mark was kind enough to take some pictures so I can send them off to Arizona to my colleague. Okay. Well, thank you, Louis, and it's kind of a hard act to follow. And I actually wrote some remarks, and I'm going to read them. I will try to do so with some gusto, and at least I'll keep you awake with the yellow. I was asked to sort of talk about thinking through memory, and what I want to say is that this is a meditation, a commemoration, and a missive. So I've been asked to talk about the work of memory, the role of memory in our work and in our lives as scholars, teachers, students, and activists. More specifically, what does it mean to think through the lens of memory about Jewish pasts and Jewish futures from the present? When Louis initially asked me to speak, I imagined a brief introduction only, to realize that later I would indeed share this session with him, which is itself an honor. And so I began to put together this talk, and when I did so, I began to think about the nature of memory, the way we remember and forget, and the interplay between these things. And this got me thinking about a book I just read, a book very much on the topic of Jewishness and race, and I really highly recommend it. I have a copy of here. This is Eliza Slavitt's book, Racial Fever, Freud, and the Jewish Question, which just came out this year. And in this book, Slavitt has a great deal to say about memory and its relation to race, specifically in Freud's writing, and especially his final book, Moses and Monotheism. Through this text and its various intertexts in both the Freudian corpus and the work of his many interlocutors, Slavitt addresses the role of memory as an inheritance, focusing on, among other things, his conversations with Derrida, with Lacan, and with Yosef Hayim Yerushalmi, and some of you know his work on memory. What drew my attention really was the fourth chapter of Slavitt's book called Secret Inclinations Beyond Direct Communication. In part, what Eliza argues in this chapter is that Freud challenges many of the ways we think about the way Jewish memory is transmitted. And she explains in these ways, Freud gets into the thorny issues of heredity, race, and even telepathy. But for today, I don't want to get into the specific arguments about these issues, nor do I want to address the merits of the specifics of either Freud's complicated position on these matters or even Slavitt's shimmering analysis. Instead, what I want to do is build on a set of insights about these matters that Eliza raises in this chapter, a set of reflections that asks us to think again about the work of cultural transmission and in the ways that memory works. In her introduction, she explains, quote, the question of whether Jewishness is always transmitted to the future is compared to the famous literary debate between Jacques Lacan and Jacques Derrida about whether, quote, the letter arrives at its destination. Freud suggests that to be Jewish is to be caught up in an interminable process of transference that threatens the borders between past and present and between self and other. Such phenomena, he suggests, may be more powerful the less they are suspected, unquote. What I want to think with you all about today is the kind of indeterminacy expressed here, as well as the longing and the persistence of these desires to remember. As I read it, and this is the tenor of the exchange between Lacan and Derrida, and I know I'm using these high culture references, but I want you to know they have something to say to all of us. Memories are a bit like letters we keep sending, and although we carefully address them, we do not have control over whether or not they arrive, who gets them, who reads them, how they are read, and what happens to them later. They are all out there in play. As Eliza first discussed it, there's something uncanny about this process, and she looks to Derrida's haunted theory of transmission, his gloss on Freud, configured quite literally in terms, and she does this beautifully, and it makes it accessible. A text that Derrida wrote called The Postcard, to draw our attention to this process. According to Eliza, Derrida's text is a conversation with the ghost of Freud. Derrida's text brings together Freud's own letters and texts with speculations of his own. Derrida re-enters the conversation belatedly. He rereads letters that were not addressed to him, old letters, and revives them and recirculates them. And in so doing, he helps us see Freud's thought and ideas anew from the perspective of Derrida's own present. And in her text, Levitt, too, adds another layer to this sedimented vision. Her own gloss on both Derrida and Freud get added to this lively and living conversation. In this way, she too reminds us vividly that the story continues, that the text is not closed, that there's more to say. Memory enters the present in strange and unexpected ways, and in so doing, it produces different futures, futures unbeknownst to those who first wrote and read and responded to those initial musings. In this way, the past is remembered, it is reanimated, and in so doing, the past, or memory, helps us imagine new possibilities. Memory and the past help us see what may have always already been present, but just out of our sight. Here, the work of Bechol Lashon and the Center for Afro-Jewish Studies here at Temple come to mind. There have always already been Black Jews, Black Hebrews, and Black Israelites, Karaites, Lemba, Imbo, and other Jews of various colors, and yet many of us in Jewish studies and in the dominant Jewish communities are only beginning to see them, you, us, and to allow this knowledge to revise all that we thought we already knew about Jews, about Jewishness, and about Judaism. Gary Tobin and his memory have helped make this particular revisioning possible. But this work does not in any simple way produce some specific end. We are still learning and seeing what will continue to come from our engagements with these posts, these letters. These letters, like Freud's, continue to circulate in complicated and unpredictable ways. This is the promise of living memory. To more fully explain this process of thinking through the past, I come back to Slavitt's book. She considers the exchange, as I said, between Derrida and Lacan, again, really all about a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, which some of you may know, The Purloined Letter. Again, the exchange and the story, like Derrida's postcard, all fall in on each other. As Levitt explains in the story, an important letter changes hands many times, and while readers understand that the letter is